Their main theory is that Susan called the school. However, there is no reliable evidence that Susan called the medical school in 1982 and posed as Kathy Durst. I want you folks to really think about this. As I will discuss, that theory was completely debunked by an unbiased witness, Dr. Dean Cooperman. Don't forget, when Dean Cooperman told the police it was Kathy that called, he was a young, vibrant, brilliant doctor trying to help the police find a missing student. He didn't have any reason to make that up. And I'm going to play for you at a point in time what Cooperman said. If Susan Berman was so crucial to Kathy's disappearance, how is it that there is no evidence in this 5-month trial that one law enforcement person ever spoke to her in nearly, how many years it is? 20 years between the murder and her death, regarding allegedly covering up for Bob? How is that possible? It's a colossal failure, not only by the police, but of this prosecution. They want you people to convict somebody saying that she was a witness when nobody in law enforcement thought she was important enough to talk to. Dean Cooperman maintained for years that it was Kathy on the call. He was one of the most consistent witnesses. Plus, he had no incentive to make that up. He has no dog in that fight. He would want to find and help find a missing student. Their case is built on this entire premise. They're wrong. The prosecution has proposed that the alleged secret Susan carried with her for 18 years was that she called the medical school posing as Kathy. This evidence has now been shown as a result of the trial that we've all been in to have been nothing more than an urban legend. It's nothing but a theory. Two important things to take away from that. He said she sounded like a medical student, which Kathy was, and he was asked about this by law enforcement multiple times and never changed his opinion. Multiple times. During his testimony, Dr. Cooperman also acknowledged that in a previous interview with the Jinx producer on February 17, 2012, that he said the caller sounded like Kathy. You don't say it sounds like somebody unless you know what their voice is. He said it sounded like Kathy.
Okay, so this is where the defense is really putting a lot of focus. If this one fact falls for the prosecution, does the whole case come tumbling down? Let's bring in Court TV legal correspondent Chanley Painter. Join us live tonight from Los Angeles County, California. Chanley, great to see you. We got a big week in store here in this case. But let's start with all of this. Give us a little more context around this call and how prosecutors attempted to prove to this jury that Susan Berman made the call, that Susan Berman was the key to unraveling the Kathy Durst case against Robert Durst.
Who else could have made the call? The prosecution spent more than 2.5 hours on Kathy Durst and her disappearance during the closing arguments for the prosecution. That's why David Chesnoff in the defense close was focusing so much on trying to counteract that big piece of evidence for several different reasons. Because if this jury believes that Susan Berman helped Robert Durst cover up the disappearance of Kathy Durst in 1982, then that would make her a witness to that crime, which would up the sentence if convicted of the first-degree murder here of Susan Berman. So that is why they focus so much on that key piece of evidence. And for the prosecution, they have Susan Berman's own words. She told multiple people that she helped her friend Bobby Durst cover up. She was his alibi, that she made that call to the medical school February 1st, 1982, pretending to be Kathy Durst, calling in sick. And the prosecution to great painstaking detail to put through witnesses and, of course, stipulations about fellow classmates and medical school students who say that that would not have been proper protocol for Kathy Durst to call a dean of the school and not the person in charge of her rotation she was supposed to begin that morning. So a lot of evidence for the prosecution here. And again, the defense trying to turn that narrative around to say that there's no way actually Susan Berman was the one that made the call, because we have Dean Cooperman, and for decades he maintained it was Kathy Durst who called him that morning.
This is, it's an important part of the case. And the bottom line is if she doesn't make that call, then the argument is, right, that, all right, she didn't make the call, she didn't help cover up, there's no reason to kill her. And by the way, Robert Durst had nothing to do with the death of Kathy Durst, or the disappearance of Kathy Durst at this point. It's a fascinating way. I mean, how much, if you had to gauge from listening to the whole closing argument, how much weight did they put on this one aspect of the prosecution case versus, poking holes or trying to do things to other parts of the prosecution case?
Well, the defense, we kind of tried to break down the timing of the prosecution close and the defense close and how much time they focused on Susan Berman, Morris Black, as well as Kathy Durst. Here, the defense spending about an hour and 11 minutes on Kathy Durst in that phone call, about 27 minutes for Susan Berman, Morris Black, 32 minutes. But the prosecution, Vinny, spent a bulk of its time, 2.5 hours, on Kathy Durst's disappearance, and about 2 hours, 12 minutes on Susan Berman, Morris Black, an hour and 12 minutes. So I think that really shows that the weight of the evidence for both prosecution and the defense, the bulk of the time focused on that woman there, Kathy Durst, because that is the genesis of it all, the disappearance of Robert Durst's wife, and according to the prosecution, everything he's done since that time to cover his tracks and evade responsibility. And key players for that, according to the prosecution, Susan Berman and, of course, Morris Black, when he found out who Robert Durst was.
Okay, stand by, Chanley. Let's bring in the think tank tonight, get some reaction. Joining us in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, criminal defense attorney, civil rights attorney Kesia Early. In Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, family law attorney Jennifer Brandt. And in Atlanta, Georgia, criminal defense attorney Michael Bixson. Good evening to everyone. Kesia, okay, this is a big part of the attack by the defense. Is that at all risky if the jury is thinking like, well, that's it? All right, so you're attacking that, but I believe that based upon the evidence that she did make the call, therefore he's guilty. I mean, can this be dangerous for the defense that it comes down to that factor and that factor? If the jury believes the prosecution, then it's game over here?
Not at all risky. It's necessary. It is the defense job to point out what the prosecution did not do. And in this case, it was absolutely necessary to point out that it was, in fact, the professor or the dean who confirmed that it was Susan Berman. So Kathy Durst. So if it wasn't Kathy Durst that made that call, then that obliterates the entire prosecution's theory of whether or not Mr. Robert Durst was, in fact, guilty. So I believe that you say that this is the murder jinx trial. This will definitely be the jinx acquittal, because I see that Robert Durst will be acquitted of these charges.
Okay. We have this on, we record the show every night, Casey. We record it so we can play it back next time you're on,
Play
just
it back.
in case.
Play it back.
All right, you may be right. I never know what these 12 people are going to do. I learned that a long time ago. Jennifer Brandt, okay. Are you at all concerned that the prosecution spent so much time on Kathy Durst when this is the murder trial for Susan Berman?
No, I think they did the right thing. And I disagree with Kesia, because I think that Robert Durst is going to be convicted. And I think that the prosecution did a very good job of showing, first you have to establish why Kathy Durst was missing and what happened to her and how Susan Berman's linked. And I think they spent a lot of time on that. And I think they did a pretty good job of showing that. And then there's a reason, a motive for Robert Durst to kill Susan Berman. So if you don't establish the Kathy Durst incident first, then I don't think, then it's true. The rest of it sort of falls apart. And I don't think that Dean, one person, is that reliable when he's recognizing a voice over the phone. I don't think that's going to carry the day in saying that it was Kathy Durst that called. So I think the defense did the best that they could, but it's not going to be good enough. That's my prediction.
Michael, what's the jury going to do with this? Is the jury going to debate? You think they're going to debate who's making this call, and they'll spend a lot of time inside that jury room? Because they focus on the call, then they're not focusing on the murder of Susan Berman.
I do. I think that they're going to spend a lot of time on it. I mean, it makes sense to focus on the motive behind this entire series of, well, alleged series of murders, right? Now, does the state need a motive? No. I mean, the jury could convict him without one, but I do think that, reasonably for a jury to convict him, they're going to want to know why would he want to do this? I mean, ultimately, if they just don't believe anything that he said on the stand, sure, they could absolutely still convict him. But I do think that a motive is going to go a very long way in helping the state's case. Okay,
I want to play a little bit because John Lewin, I mean, he's been sitting there and he's been waiting. He made a lot of objections. He exploded at the end of last week, but he got up finally with his opportunity to give his rebuttal closing argument. He started that today. Let's take a listen.
This is about as simple a case as you'll ever find. There is, by the way, there is no time limit that you have as jurors. You could go back in that jury room, and it would certainly be reasonable for you to go, okay, prosecution's put on what amounts to about 4 confessions. Bob Durst is finding the body. He's setting the cadaver note. He's got Susan Berman breathing on him when she's dead. He's got garbage about staycations and marijuana pot growers and industrial-sized tampons. I mean, some of the stuff that he came up with, it was just awe-inspiring. You sit there going, oh my gosh, where does he even come up with this from? You could go back there, and it would be completely reasonable for you to go, okay, what did the prosecution put on? They put on, if all you had, they put on Bob Durst admitting that he found the body. And previously to admitting he found the body, we have a cadaver note. A note that before he admitted he wrote, he said, quote, a note only the killer could have written. If all you had in this case was Bob Durst's original denials that he had found Susan Berman's body, but you had the cadaver note that he admitted to writing, you would be within your authority as jurors to say, you know what, there is not a reasonable interpretation as to how Bob Durst would have been in California, in Los Angeles for no reason when he said he was never here, how he would have gone to her house, found Susan dead, and not called the police if he weren't her killer. That's before we even talk about Kathy or Morris or anything else. So just because this case is lengthy doesn't mean when you go back into that deliberation room that you have any obligation to go, okay, let's look through every piece of evidence. You are well within your discretion, if you so choose, to go back and say, okay, we've heard the evidence. Is there anybody here who doesn't think that the prosecution's proven this case beyond a reasonable doubt? And if that's where you are, and that's what the evidence dictates, that's it. This is not complicated. The defense wants this to be complicated. They want it to be involved. They want it to be controversial. It isn't. It is very basic.
KC, I was watching you as you're listening to that. Are you buying what John Lewin is selling, which this is a very simple 5-month trial?
He goes from it's simple, it's not complicated, and then he complicates the entire case. He had a case in the beginning, and I'm just listening to his closing arguments, and I always say, take me to closing, and I'll take you to an acquittal as a defense attorney. But I believe he lost the jury, focusing on Morris Black. If I'm a juror, I'm going back there in deliberation and saying, let's put aside Morris Black because he was acquitted. You're telling me to follow the rule of law, and then you're bringing up Morris Black to show this propensity of violence, this propensity for him to commit these crimes. He just convoluted this entire case. He lost the jury. He lost the trial. I'll say it again, not guilty.
Jennifer Brandt, he's looking not only for a guilty verdict, but he wants a fast guilty verdict.
Well, and I think he did the jury a favor, actually, because he's trying to make it very simple for them. He's saying, look, it's not all that complicated. Don't spend all the time going through all this evidence. Just look at this guy. He's guilty. I mean, he's just trying to make it as simple as possible. And I think it's somewhat helpful for the jury. You don't have to go through everything. You can just decide right away, do we think he's guilty or not? And just break it down that way. So in some ways, I think he's trying to do the jury a favor. So
All
I
right.
still disagree with Castillo.
Let's check back in with Chanley Painter. Chanley, John Lewin was looking for the super fast verdict. That was amazing. I've never seen that move that direct to a jury. Like, I've seen people argue, like me, it's a simple case, but then saying, listen, you can find him guilty. You can go in there, you can vote, and we can be out of here, folks. All right, so what is in store for tomorrow? When does the jury get the case? When are we in verdict watch? All of that.
Well, Prosecutor Lewin will resume his rebuttal close promptly in the morning, 9 a.m. Pacific. That's noon Eastern. He will have until the lunch break here, Vinny, to close his case out, because that's when the judge says this jury must begin deliberations. They will deliberate along the same schedule as the court schedule. So until about 4:30, 7:30 Eastern every day, deliberating. Court is dark on Thursday, so they do have Friday, though, as an option to continue deliberations if they don't have a verdict by tomorrow or Wednesday, Vinny.
All right. Well, we'll see if they listen to the prosecutor. I mean, we could be talking about a verdict 24 hours from now. If they listen to John Lewin. All right. Chanley Painter in Los Angeles. Big week, folks. Thanks so much.